Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is Francisco at VCS, and thank you for registering for our Path to Migration class today. Today's class is sort of an introductory class. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the newest version of the ScheduleApp program, and we're going to talk about the steps that need to be taken in order to transition from the legacy application over to this new version. Now, part of that process will involve signing up for some of our online class offerings. So at some point, I'll take you through that registration process and which classes we're going to ask you to take. Now, the very first step in setting this up is installing the newest version of the program onto your desktop computer. And it's important to understand that you can install it and configure it as everyone in your organization continues to use the legacy version. This is going to allow you to, of course, complete the various build or migration tasks. It will allow you to become comfortable with the newest version before you roll it out to the rest of your department. Now, I currently have the login screen displayed on my desktop computer. This is the brand new desktop application. And I'd just like to take you for kind of a brief tour of how everything is organized. So for the time being, I'm going to log on with the administrative username and password. And some of you may already be using this in the legacy version when you're processing payroll or building schedules. You may still have that administrative account active. In fact, that is the only account that will work on this new version the first time you bring it up. And that is because we have to transition all of our user logins from the legacy version over to the new one. So I'm going to log in with my SecAdmin account. And right from the start, you're going to notice that the menu structure for the application has changed significantly. Now, as you click on a particular drop-down menu, the sidebar over on the left will populate with the various screens under that menu, and they're all categorized by the type of function it is. Now, just from left to right, very briefly, I'd just like to go over some of these drop-down menus. Under File, you'll be able to add search tags or edit your very own sidebar. So if there is a group of screens that as an administrator you may use quite often, you may choose to create your own sidebar, and a list of those frequently used screens will now be displayed. So let's click on Edit My Sidebar. Let's bring over a handful of screens that an administrator, maybe even a supervisor might use. I'll just select these three, and at the bottom, we'll add that to my sidebar, and we will save and close out. Now, just by clicking on my sidebar, I have access to those screens. So you may find day to day there's a handful of screens that you're using. Instead of navigating your way around the various menu items, this just might be a quicker way to access those screens. You also have the ability to search for screens. Enter a keyword like time off or overtime, and you'll see a list of those screens relating to that topic. shown below. Now you can also add search tags to any screens. So if there's a screen like Manage Time Off where you would go to Approve Time Off Requests, you may choose to add a search tag. So here's an example of a screen that we have renamed in our newest version. This is what we're going to use to approve time off requests. So in order to make the transition a little easier for some of your users, you can enter a search tag like Approve Time Off, add it, and the next time anyone tries to search for a screen, they'll be able to find it that way. So that's just an interesting feature. Now, next up, under the View drop-down menu, not a whole lot of changes have occurred here compared to the legacy version. You will still have access to your activity log. You will have access to your message center. The next drop-down menu is called Administration. Under the legacy version, you recognize this as your setup menu. A good portion of the build will take place under the Administration drop-down menu, whether it's adding employees, creating day off and overtime reason codes. Those items which you formerly used under the setup menu are now found under Administration. Under the Employee Zone, we have added the various employee-based functions that actually link right to the web portal. Under the Supervisor Zone, we have the ability to approve time off, approve overtime, schedule overtime using various tools such as open shifts or call lists through what we now call the overtime replacement policy. And in many cases, you're going to find that this menu replaces the right-click menu that you've been using in the legacy version of the program. Under the Build Schedule menu, you'll be able to create schedule rotations, assign employees to schedule rotations, as well as reassign employees to new rotations. And so here you're going to see screens that were found either under the Build Schedule or Update Schedule drop-down menus. Under Timesheets and Payroll, you're going to find the same timesheet and payroll functions that you had available in the legacy application. The only real difference is that the payroll rules, if you are using payroll rules, have now been relocated into a section called Payroll Setup Center. So this is where you'll be able to create pay periods and set up payroll rules for overtime calculation. You'll also be able to establish things like shift differential pay. And Timesheets and Payroll is where you will go to actually process payroll every 2 weeks or so. For those of you that clock in and out through some sort of a kiosk or time clock system, you will be able to modify punch-in and out times or apply punch-in and out times for any of your employees under this section. The training drop-down menu is really nothing more than the training and certification module. Here you'll be able to create schools, assign employees to those schools, and track any of their training activity. If you are currently using the Extra Duty Billing application, that will also be available in this drop-down menu. For those using the PARS auto-dialing system, those items will appear as well. For now, we're going to skip over to the Reports section. And here, all reports, whether they are payroll related or otherwise, are all listed in a section categorized by the type of report. Here's our sidebar that we just recently built, and of course our Help drop-down menu, which has access to support and training information, as well as allows you to view the version of the application you're currently running. Now, the desktop application is designed to replace the current client application you're using now. With regards to the training module and the extra duty module, and I would include timesheets in that as well, you'll be pleased to know that really nothing has changed. The screens may look a little different, but the process for handling those functions really has not changed. It's the same screens, it's the same steps, they're just now included within this desktop environment. Now, aside from the menu structure that's changed, the desktop dashboard has changed quite a bit. You are no longer tied to the daily, weekly, and monthly formats that you were locked into in the legacy version. Here, you have a far more customizable desktop dashboard where windows can be resized to fit your needs. And even additional details beyond just the daily schedule can be placed on several of these pages. So here at the very bottom, I have daily schedules, I have weekly schedules, and monthly, which should look fairly familiar. You have monthly calendar views. Here's our yearly schedule and our daily roster. But in addition to that, you can add additional content onto any page within these profiles. So again, you have just a far more customizable dashboard. And throughout this migration process, you're going to learn how to migrate your existing schedule views from your legacy version, as well as create brand new ones to take advantage of some of the added functionality. Now, I'd like to take a moment to also show you our newest web portal. I'm going to log in once again using my administrative account. And what you may notice is that the menu structure within the web portal matches the new desktop application. So simply click on the drop-down menu and select the screen that you would like. You'll also notice that you have a lot more administrative and supervisory level functions available through the web portal. As an administrator, you'll be able to add new employees, build schedules. You'll even be able to process payroll. For supervisors, you'll be able to not only approve time off and overtime like you always have, but you'll also be able to fill staffing shortages using call lists or even text messaging. In fact, you may actually choose to have all of your supervisors transition over to the web-based application. Along with the web portal, for those of you who are hosted by us, you also have access to BCS's mobile app. iPhone and Android users will be able to download the mobile application for free, of course. And through that mobile app, you will be able to manage time off and overtime requests for yourself. You'll be able to view schedules in multiple formats. And that, of course, becomes available once you have migrated over to the latest version. Now, what you're looking at here is really our initial moves into eventually phasing out the desktop application. Now, that's not going to happen overnight, but as you can see, a lot of the administrative and supervisory privileges are in here, to the point where eventually you may not even need the desktop version of the program any longer, and you will be working from really a completely web-based application. So with that very brief preview of the desktop and web application, there's certain steps that you're going to need to complete in order to be able to transition over. One of the first things you're going to need to do is, once you log on to your new version, you're going to notice that you do not have a dashboard like the one you just saw. Okay. So the application might look like it's empty, but it's truly not. It's still linked to the same database that your legacy application was tied to. You don't have to re-enter your employees. You don't have to re-enter your shifts or any of the schedule activity. But there are a few things that you need to bring over from the legacy version, and we're going to talk about those right now. Under the Administration drop-down menu, we're going to select from the category Security, and it's the only screen in that section called Security Designer. Over on the left, you should only have one security level available. It's either going to be called Administrator or SecAdmin, modeled after your legacy version. You'll want to make sure that the Migration Aid checkbox is marked. Your Migration Aid is a tool that allows you to transition just a handful of items over into the newest version. Close out of the screen, And some of you who may log in right now may notice that you already have the migration aid available in the drop-down menu. If, however, you had the checkbox unmarked, you may have to log out and log back in order to see this. Now, the first thing we're going to do under the migration aid is transfer our legacy security levels. Now, security has changed quite a bit in the newest version of ScheduleApp, and it has changed for the better. More functionality, more flexibility. But here all we're interested in doing is taking our security levels, transferring them over into ScheduleApp. So for the purposes of keeping things consistent, I'm going to use the same naming convention, although the system does allow me to change it to something else. So instead of user, I could have chosen to enter basic user. When you click on the Apply button, it's going to look at the legacy screens that the user level had access to, and it's going to create a brand new security profile that's designed for ScheduleApp, and it's going to grant them the same screens. After we receive confirmation that it's done, we're going to continue this process for the rest of the security levels. In my case, system operator may have been used by supervisors, so maybe that's the new name I will give it. And again, if you feel more comfortable giving it the same name, that's perfectly fine as well. Now, right out of the box, the legacy system came with 4 security levels. You may have created some more after that. That's perfectly fine. But just remember to copy all of them over before completely closing out of this screen. The next thing you'll want to do under the migration aid is select Schedule Details Copy Utility. In ScheduleApp, a schedule detail is a vehicle, an AED, but it can also be customizable categories that you may choose to create to track pieces of equipment or particular skill types. What this does for us is this takes our existing vehicles and AED assignments, if we've used that in the legacy system, and copies it over onto ScheduleApp. The drop-down date allows you to go as far back as you would like. So if I was to select January 1st, 2016 and click on the Apply button, this would take all of the vehicle assignments and AED assignments and apply them to the schedule within the new program. It's a tricky concept because what we've done here is we created a brand new item within the system called Schedule Details, and we did it to provide you with an extra level of flexibility so that you can create more categories instead of just the cars, AEDs, and job assignments that you had in the legacy version. In order to provide you with that level of flexibility, we had to change how those items were programmed into the system, if you will. This allows us to copy those items and format them to be used within the new version. Let's close that out. And the last item under the Migration Aid category is called Tile Profile. If I click on the drop-down menu for Legacy Desktop, this is going to show you the various shift views that you used in your legacy system. By selecting one of them and clicking on the Preview button, it will show you what this same schedule or shift view would look like if you transferred it over to the newest version of the program. And all it's doing is it's saying if you were happy with the 4 or 5 tabs that were in the legacy version and you want to continue using that same setup, the system will just copy that template over, and then you just only have to fine-tune it. Now, to copy this one over, I just give it a new desktop name. So this is the legacy name, and this is the name that will be used for the newest version of the program. Let's click on the Save button. And really within just a couple of seconds, your dashboard has been created. We'll still have to modify it a bit, but it's pretty close. Okay. So right now, I'd like to just take a brief moment to allow you to complete those 3 steps if you would like to. Also to take any questions you might have about the 3 items on the migration aid. Now, when we're done with this, we're going to take a look at transferring over your fairness rotation list. So for those of you that are using the system in the legacy version to fill overtime using call list, I'm going to show you how you can transition those over. Okay. Are there any questions on the migration aid items covered so far?
No questions here.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. So now that we have set up our brand new profile or transferred it over from the legacy system, just a couple of items left to make these usable. So your daily schedules are in place. However, your weekly schedule views still have to be built. So under the legacy version, as you recall, whenever you entered a weekly or monthly schedule view, you had to select the groups or squads you wanted to see. This has changed in ScheduleApp. Here, up top, we click on Edit Dashboard, and from the main screen designer, we're able to specifically set up these views. So by clicking on the green button on the top left for a weekly schedule, we're going to find weekly schedule on the list, and over on the right, we're going to set the properties for that tile. You can have it auto refresh, and then below you can select which groups or squads you want included. Under the sort mode, in order to keep things consistent with the legacy application, select a group and then select the week start date, Sunday, Monday, anything you'd like. Click on Apply and Use. And although it may take a few seconds for that to refresh, you have just configured that weekly schedule view. So using the main screen designer, let's click Save and Exit, and there's your weekly schedule. So now instead of the person selecting the groups they want to see, we're just setting that up beforehand. Now you may choose to have a weekly schedule view for dispatch or communications, where only those people are displayed. Another one for patrol, that's perfectly fine. Okay. Otherwise, you can just select all groups, and then folks just need to scroll up and down to see the entire weekly schedule. We're going to do the same thing for our monthly schedule. Clicking on the green button with the plus sign in it and moving the main screen designer over to the bottom corner here, I'm going to look for my monthly schedule grid. Over on the right, I'm going to use my timer and set how frequently I want that screen to refresh. And below, I can choose which groups or all groups. We'll click on Apply and Use. And I can continue going on. Under the yearly schedule, that one is already preset for me because that one is employee-based anyway. Under the blotter, that's looking at my daily roster, but instead of adding something, I can choose to just modify. So instead of choosing which tile, because that's been done for me already, I can choose which groups I want included on that blotter. Under hourly validation, if you are currently set up to track hourly validation, you'll notice that that tile is already set for you on that page. So instead of adding content, just edit and choose which validation shift you want it to point to. You can use the middle buttons here to resize or add an additional window to any page. So up top, I might be looking at dispatch staffing requirements, whereas here I may want to add another one that's going to track hourly validation for my patrol schedules. Using the main screen designer, I just make sure I click Save after every edit, and I exit out of the dashboard mode. Now, there is a class specifically set up to show you how to create these profiles, how to configure them, how to make the most out of them. But keep in mind that this is a tool that should only be available to administrators. So you're not necessarily going to allow everyone to create their own dashboard views. It's best to create one for everyone else to use. Now we're going to move away from the migration aid section, and we're going to move over to replacement policy. Now the legacy version referred to this as the overtime fairness rotation. So there's a bit of a terminology change here. This is now called replacement policy. If you are using the legacy program to generate call lists, you're going to have to transfer those over into the new version. To do that, click on Employee List, click on Migrate, and under Legacy, select the list that you want to bring over. Give it a name that will be used in the newest version, and for this I would probably suggest using the same name because people are comfortable with that, they know it, so when they move over to the new version, there's less of a learning curve. Click on Import, and it should save it still. Okay, my apologies. My internal issue here. Once you click OK, that list will be brought over for you automatically. Now, whether your lists are based on hours worked or if it's just a rotating list, it's important that you do this as soon as you're ready to start using the system. It's okay to do it now, just you may want to consider doing it again, because if people are still using the list in the legacy version, the hours that it's accruing, the information that it's tracking is not dynamically being changed in ScheduleApp. So you may actually want to leave this, towards the end when you're ready to make the final transition. Outside of that, you don't have to actually transfer anything else in. As I mentioned before, your employees, your schedules, your time off and overtime activity have all automatically transitioned over. Now it's really just a matter of learning this new version. And so to do that, we have online class offerings, and let me just bring that up. And so you used something very similar to this to sign up for this afternoon's class. Now, what we're going to recommend here is that you sign up for Basic Setup, Dashboard Setup, right? That's class number 4. This is where we're going to teach you how to build active tile dashboards. Those are the desktop views we just looked at. Next, Class 6, Validation Rules. If you've already converted over to hourly staffing requirements, you can actually skip this step. For folks who are using shift validation, where basically you're saying I need a certain amount of people per shift, you're going to need to transition those into hourly requirements. So you're going to have to say, for this group of shifts, I need a certain amount of people working each hour of the day. Under class number 7, you're going to learn a little bit more about user setup and security configuration. So you're going to learn a little bit more about how security works in the new system and how to tie everyone over into their new security profiles, which will determine which screens they have access to. Once you have attended those online classes, you're ready to be trained. On the same registration page, you'll have basic user training classes as well as supervisor training classes. We also have some administrative classes available just so that you can learn how to enter a brand new employee. The process has not changed a whole lot, but the screens look a little different. So those are just great, refresher classes where we're teaching you how to do the things that you always knew how to do, but you're doing them in just a slightly different looking environment. Once you have attended these classes, you're ready to go live. It's really just a matter of getting everyone trained up. These classes, especially the basic user and supervisor classes, are given on a regular basis. They are recorded, so if that's just the easiest way to deliver training to your people, you can certainly make use of that. And that's it. From this point, once you're done migrating your items over, you're ready to take the next step and sign up for the classes. Now, I would recommend that you try to take them in numerical order. We have a catalog of about 20 classes we provide, so you're not going to have a class 1, 2, and 3. You're going to go from 4 to 6 to 7, 8, 9, 10. So we're just, we're not making you go through every single class that we offer, just the ones that you need in order to successfully transition over. So I'd like to open up the mics and just take any last questions that you might have on this process. But I did just want to mention very briefly that we also offer help out sessions. So on this page, after you've begun the process, if you run into any issues during any one of the classes, whether you're having trouble completing one of the steps or, just need extra help, please sign up for those one-on-one help out sessions. Okay. Are there any questions about the migration aid or anything else that we've covered this afternoon?
No.
Okay. Does it seem at least somewhat straightforward at this stage?
So far.
So far. Okay, and a lot of it is just, you have to do it. But again, you always have those help out sessions that you can fall back on if you run into any problems. Okay, but if there isn't any other questions, that's it for me this afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.